Philip, it's great to have you on the podcast.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Good, good. Hey, it'd be great if you could start by describing ZoomInfo. When was it started? What was its purpose? What services does it offer now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think ZoomInfo is basically the leading business go-to-market platform. Uh, it is powered by real-time data, and we basically what we do is we derive insights from data we collect all across the web, and we use that data and these signals to help businesses go to market and help them sell and market in a more optimized way. So today, if you think about the digital world, businesses are um, interacting with multiple personas across the companies they sell to. These companies have a lot of changes that are happening on a daily basis. That information is very hard to track if you're trying to do it manually. And what ZoomInfo provides you is a platform that allows you to capture all this data automatically and utilize it as part of your go-to-market motion to help you close more business faster in a more efficient way.
Yeah. So I want to make sure I understand. So basically, a company has interactions with its customers in many ways that are, digital or in person. And they want to capture those interactions, the information about those interactions, store it, and have it available whenever they plan another kind of outreach, or they do some marketing to that company or that person. Correct?
Yep, exactly. I can give you an example. So think about a company that raised around in the last 48 hours, and you're a seller that tries to sell a product to that company. That information could be helpful information, A, to reach out and congratulate your stakeholder and say, congrats on the last round, and also talk about opportunities of how you can expand your uh, product selling in that environment in a better way. So you can talk about the how the product that you're trying to sell is going to help that company to expand their goals, their strategy. And I think that's the beauty of ZoomInfo, that it gives you all that information in one place. It calls out the most significant signals that help drive those conversations and help you close these deals faster at a higher quality and higher ACVs.
I think it might be helpful if you describe a term that's used to describe what ZoomInfo does, and that is the term data broker. What is a data broker, and what role do data brokers play in today's data ecosystem?
It's a great question. So, data brokers in general are companies or entities that collect data, third party data that exist on the web. They pull this data for the purposes of different use cases. And the data is being used to solve those use cases and help other companies act on it in different
Hmm.
ways. So I'll give you an example. There are companies like Experian that collect data to try and measure your credit score. That's one type of use case that is different from what ZoomInfo does.
Hmm.
ZoomInfo, as a data broker, focuses on collecting third-party data to help companies go to market through business, through sales, through marketing, and optimize their journeys to bring a customer from being a prospect to a paid customer in their funnel.
Hmm.
So that data is being collected across the board. We follow all CCPA and GDPR um, regulations, and in those, we ensure that the data that we collect comes to the platform that we've built that helps drive that business forward and allow our customers and users to log into the platform and have all that data available to them in a seamless way.
Yeah, interesting. And a lot of what you do is build personas, correct? Which are kind of another way of saying market segments. How does that work?
That's a great question. So the way we think about the world, there are companies and there are people who work for those companies. The companies themselves come from different industries. There are different sizes, segments, dividend revenue bands. There's a lot of information, metadata that describes companies. That information can be utilized to cluster them into groups, and each company will cluster their customers or their prospects into these groups And that would be at the company level. In a
Hmm.
similar way, there are people who work for those companies, different personas of companies. There's account executives, there's SDRs, there's MDRs, um, different personas that live within that company that have different
Hmm.
skills and different specializations that would care about your product. What ZoomInfo allows you to do is to take uh, this universe of companies that exist in the world, the universe of people who work for those companies, and generate what we call an ICP, an ideal customer profile. And that
Hmm.
ideal customer profile can be a company, it can be a person, and the combination of both helps you go to market because you can now optimize the journeys for those personas, for those specific companies, and be able to convert them to paying customers.
Yeah. So there are a ton of companies kind of in the business of doing this, in B2C. What's the landscape for B2B, which is where you are?
Yeah, we have. There are multiple companies in the market that do. Uh, I would say two parts of what we do. I
Hmm.
think ZoomInfo is the leading player today in the market by far, and with that, we've have perfected since 2007. We've perfected how we do what we do, which brought us to being a public company and the sales that we can get to, and that capability has brought us to a place where AR is our data, which is one of our core assets you talked about as being data broker.
Hmm.
Us as a data broker ensures that the data quality is at a highest level compared to all of our competitors. And the bigger part, which is also something that we've built in the past few years and we're focusing on as part of Copilot, which is a product that we're launching, is the ability to take that data and ensure that it's an integrated part of how our customers use our product and how it becomes basically I would say a partner in their day to day. So instead of you having to remember every interaction or everything that you need to do, the approach of Copilot is basically you have someone who has your back and provides you all the information at the right time and enables you to act upon it in the day to day activities that you do that will help you drive towards the goal of either upselling or selling in general to a new customer or existing customer and help grow that account.
Interesting that the name of the product, Copilot, that's a famous Microsoft product, right? Isn't it?
There is a another product. Copilot
Yeah.
is a term that is being used in multiple places.
Yeah, yeah.
As we Yep. So there is a yeah the Copilot product for Microsoft is a similar concept, but for people who write code, which is a
Yeah.
bit of a different use case. But ZoomInfo Copilot is targeted towards the personas that try to sell or market to businesses on a daily basis.
Are you using AI or machine learning or generative AI in your Copilot product?
We do in many places. So our product and our company as a whole, driven a lot by our CEO Henry, is
Hmm.
focusing on enabling and incorporating AI as part of almost every step of the way. Copilot by itself is mainly driven by AI components, from the point of how do we analyze the data to how we provide recommendations. Chorus is a product that we use. There's transcripts that come from meetings. How do we pull that information in to be able to drive these conversations? So a lot of what we do and how we see AI is based, and the reason why we call it Copilot because in the old world where you didn't have Copilot, a lot of the things that you had to do on a day-to-day basis as a customer or as an AE or an MDR or SDR, people who
Hmm.
sell or market on a daily basis, you had to remember a lot of things, and
Yeah.
you had to always be on top of taking notes, knowing what happened in the last 5 minutes to be able to act upon it. What Copilot does, it helps
Mhm.
you organize that and allows you to shine as the seller or the marketing persona and do the work that you're best at and take the long tail of things that you need to take care of and automate it in the background so you don't have to focus on.
Now help me understand a little bit. So is a salesperson or customer support person or somebody like that who's on the line either through a chat or a phone call or something, with a customer, do they have Copilot as their interface that they can be popping questions to and getting answers to, or how does it work?
So a lot of it, as you know, this is our first iteration of Copilot that is coming
Yeah,
out. That iteration, I think, as a whole, will have um, offline information that will be provided to those sellers. So when you
yeah,
prepare for a call, when you are ready to make recommendations or want to have a very thoughtful discussion with your prospect or customer, the approach would be is that you'd have all that information gathered for you through our product that allow you to prepare for that conversation.
yeah.
In the longer
Okay.
term, I believe that this will be something that will be more of an interactive agent that will be there with you during the conversation and allow you to service information that will be helpful to drive the conversation in a way that will increase your probability to close the deal or close the opportunity
Yeah.
or help upsell the customer.
Yeah, that's been, the whole idea of having a digital assistant at at your side. Man, that's been a dream for decades, and it's turned out to be quite challenging to do it. But I think it seems like with generative AI, it's going to be a bit easier. Don't you think so?
I do. I think that there's a lot of I think noise in the system where people think that AI will take over a lot of the work that people do today. The way I see it, and it's funny that you brought up Copilot and Microsoft. At the end
Yeah,
of the day, Microsoft and Copilot that comes out of it helps
yeah,
productivity of developers. And as you probably know, at the end of the day, there isn't a fixed demand for code for so when you increase the productivity of a developer, that doesn't mean that we need to write 100 lines of code a day, and now that with Copilot you're gonna meet it faster, so half of the day you're just gonna be sitting and waiting
right.
for them to happen. But what it does, it increases productivity across the world for companies that use Copilot, and now they can achieve more with less, which is important, and creates more and more opportunities to engage with our sales and marketing personas across the org.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, I want to kind of take a turn here and about your role in the company a little bit because I think on the podcast, a lot of people who listen really want to kind of identify with a person and kind of say, could I do a job like that, or what could I learn from that person? So tell us about your role. What's your title, and what do you do?
Yeah. I'm the VP of Data and Analytics here at ZoomInfo. My main customers are internal customers, so I serve the
Yeah,
corporate side of the business. Uh, if you think about the corporate world in a B2B company, it is structured from HR, finance, marketing, sales, CX, legal, compliance, operations, product, and engineering departments. And in
yeah,
those departments, we have employees, and these employees have needs from a data and analytics perspective. And we try to meet these needs on a daily basis through providing them access to a platform that allows them to analyze data on their own. So, from a self-service perspective, uh, for the more sophisticated users, we have our data engineering capabilities that are given through that platform as well, allowing us to build data models. We have the ML data science team that builds a lot of the predictive models and products that utilize that, and the data governance team that is responsible for the data quality. And all of that is part of the data product development lifecycle. And that's what we will. We build data products to help our customers across the org to consume data and insights that help them make more insightful and data driven decisions on their next step of how they drive the business forward towards prosperity.
cool, cool. Hey, how long have you been with the company?
I've been at ZoomInfo for a year and a half.
A year and a half. And what did you do before?
Before coming to ZoomInfo, I led a data science and ML team at DocuSign.
Oh, okay.
That's what I done before for a few years. Before that, I've worked at a company called LeadSpace, which is also in the B2B sales world. Um,
Yeah,
and in general, I'm a geek in the data space.
yeah,
I enjoy. Uh, I do this outside of work as well with either consulting or working with other data and AI startups to just learn what they do and see if there's ways for me to help them.
So in addition to your day job, you're basically kind of reaching out into the startup community and learning what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, and I think
That's
it's
quite,
critical
yeah,
for any role that deals with data and AI, especially in this world today. There's so many things that are popping up, and I'm lucky enough to have the opportunity to work to be part of groups like Invest in Data, which is a syndicate of data executives, different companies in the SaaS world. And what we do is once a quarter we look at different startups and we evaluate them, usually pre-seed or post-seed, and we see if what they're trying to solve is helpful, and then evaluate their ability to solve things for us and our companies. So it's a great mechanism for us to learn about the market, learn about innovation, and bring it to the companies that we work for.
that is really interesting. What's the name of it again?
Invest in Data. IID is the acronym.
Yeah, I've never heard of anything like that. That's so smart.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great opportunity for executives or employees at companies to be engaged in these type of groups. It helps widen the spectrum of what you know and learn, and integrate those into the day to day of your corporate world, where you can embed those technologies to
Yeah,
improve efficiency of employees in the company.
yeah. You know, before we met today, I did a little bit of background research on you. Of course, I always looked at the LinkedIn profile, and yours was
Mhm.
pretty damn interesting. And you put, there was in the about line, you put the words stochastic parrot, which is a bit
Yeah,
provocative because basically, I'm not a technical guy, but I do know that a stochastic parrot, kind of by the dictionary definition, is a large language model that communicates with humans in English, but it doesn't really understand what it's saying. So that's when you're using this term, are you using it in that way, or do you have a different idea of what that means and how it's useful to you and your company?
yeah. It's mostly I think a bit of a joke about, so
Yeah,
LLMs when they came out, there was a question that came up is, when those LLMs write something, do they know
yeah,
what they're talking about, or they're just mimicking language that they learn of training on large data sets? And
yeah,
so the concept of a stochastic parrot came up as part of that initial launch of GPT and Chat GPT and all the other LLMs that came out. And to me, it was funny because at the end of the day, that question is a bit of a philosophical question. A lot of
yeah.
what we say as human beings is and a lot of what we learn is the derivative of the people that we listen to and the things that we read. So
Correct.
I don't think it's a binary question, but it's mostly it's sort of a joke about this whole question of what are we? Are we strategic crows? Are we stochastic parrots? And I think the answer is we're both.
Yeah,
That's the fun. Yeah.
you're a bit of a provocateur, aren't you?
I think being w- where I grew up and my background is, I was born in Moscow in Russia and grew up in
Uh,
Israel, which is
yes.
both through strong Russian family that and a dad that I grew up in a certain environment that that made me what I am today, and I'm working on it. But it's sometimes I also like that of me, so it's a it's an it's a nice thing to have.
Oh yeah. Even within an organization, I think provocative is something it makes everybody think, right? It challenges people. And even if it's kind of a joke, it's kind of a joke, but maybe it isn't a joke. So it kind of
Yeah,
keeps people on their toes and stuff like that. So I think that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
You we talked before a little bit about AI, kind of relative to your product Copilot, but I wanted to talk more broadly about it. It's been a year and a half since these generative models, generative AI and large language models really started kind of capturing the popular imagination. Lots of news articles, lots of debates, lots of predictions, all this kind of stuff. It seems like a real turning point in in technology, computer science, business, even society. How do you see this? I mean, what kind of capabilities do you see coming as a result of these technologies that kind of we couldn't do as well or maybe even at all before?
Mhm. Um, I think in general, there's I think I see two camps of people. Ones that treat it as something that can be treated as a doomsday in some
Yeah.
sense, that we're losing to the battle of AI or whatever it's being called, and another camp that sees it as uh, the next industrial revolution. And I
Yeah.
think the truth is somewhere in the middle. At the end of the day, the way I see this, at least in the short term, it's a productivity boost tool. A lot of people use ChatGPT or any of its competitors for multiple use cases. When you write things, it helps you write them a bit better. When you learn things, it helps you structure that learning experience a bit more. When you write code, back to the Microsoft Copilot example, it helps
Mhm.
you write it more efficiently. In our example of ZoomInfo, sellers and marketing managers now can do their work more efficiently at a higher quality in less time. So the way I see it is that at least in the short to the medium term, I see it as a productivity boost tool. Um, in the longer term, there's this concept called AGI, artificial general intelligence, which I
Mhm.
think is something that hasn't been defined yet. I think it's an evolving term. It used to be treated as something that a Turing test is basically
Yeah.
the way to evaluate if something is an AI or not. But we already passed that point.
Yeah.
So that's one way to look at it. That's how the doomsday camp will look at it. But I think the other way to look at it is say the Turing test by itself is an evolving test. If you're aware that the environment now has these LLMs, then now the Turing test becomes a harder test to pass. So it's something inherently that changes as we go. It's not something static that you
Yeah.
pass and that's it. We've passed the
Yeah.
Turing test.
So, but do you see at some point, does AI, generative AI, kind of transition from being kind of operational and tactical to being strategic and really incisive in terms of the kind of new insights that we can get from it?
I think that there are areas today where this is happening. On the biotech side, there's some interesting stuff coming from AlphaFold and some other initiatives that are coming from DeepMind. I think that on average, no, in the short term, but in the longer term, it's hard for me to predict.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we hope for the best, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. So now we talked a bit about how you're using AI at ZoomInfo, specifically with Copilot. Talk a little bit about more broadly. What are the use cases within the company?
So there's a lot of use cases that, as you mentioned, are targeted towards our product that we're building and part of our offering. Um, on the corporate side, I think there's a lot of initiatives that are being done right now that are sort of a playground that at some point will be integrated into the product. So if you think about it, we use ZoomInfo's internal employees sort of as guinea pigs for some of the things that we want to implement in the product. Because at the end of the day, we also have a sales org, we have a marketing team, uh, we have different personas at the company where we can test out the different initiatives that we're doing. And there are multiple initiatives that are currently in flight that are being done from being able to have account summaries, helping salespeople understand what is the journey that the customer went so far, um, and being able to empower our AEs and AMs to do the work. There are other initiatives talked about meeting intelligence. So if you think about, are you aware of the NPS score in general and what it stands for?
In a very general sort of way, but go ahead with it. Yeah.
So the NPS score is a way to evaluate how customers are thinking about the product that you sell. It's a net promoter score that allows you to ask your customers what do they think. They answer a set of questions, and based on these questions, you get a score, and the score basically tells you where do you fall on the spectrum of happy versus not happy from the product. the way it's being done today, there's a lot of effort to get that to that score. It includes a lot of engagements with the customers outside of their regular interactions. And I think one of the things that are great about this new world is that if sellers or marketing managers or anyone or CSMs jump on a call with a customer, there's a lot of information that can be gathered out of these conversations, uh, much more than what you would gather through a questionnaire that the customer would respond to.
Gotcha.
And I think all these interactions that happen today, and I think that's the great part about what ZoomInfo is heading and doing in the Copilot piece, is how do you look at all interactions that happen today in your funnel, collect that information, and be able to drive insights. And these insights are not just for how you go to market. These insights will be helpful for the product team, because at the end of the day, if you were on a call with a customer who mentioned 4 items that are related to how we can improve the product, and because the person on the call has so many things on their plate, they're not able to capture all that
Sure.
information. Copilot captures that information and provides that as feedback to our product team, to our CSM team, to our sales team, and helps us as a company improve on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. So does Copilot, by looking at the material, looking at what's been captured, does it know who to channel it to, or does it channel everything to everybody?
So at this point, this is specifically talking about internal initiatives. Something
Yeah.
we call meeting intelligence is basically the ability to look at a meeting where there was an interaction between an employee of ZoomInfo, and a customer or prospect, collect that information, and then we're able, through prompt engineering and a few other technologies, being able to ask specific questions that relate to each of the sections. So we can ask from that interaction, what was the feedback that was provided that relates to our product, and then it
Right.
spits out a list of items that we can send automatically to our CPO and say, hey, here's some feedback that's coming from our customers. Here are the main themes, just so you're aware. And this is the ACV of these customers that have provided that feedback. In a similar way, we can provide it to the CS org, to the sales org, and so on. So I think that by itself is such a powerful tool
Yeah.
for any
Absolutely.
business leader, for a company, that I think it will have a lot of benefits in the long term.
Yeah, I think that has great promise. Hey, I want to go back to your LinkedIn profile just one more time. I don't want to get hung up on it or anything, but you said you wrote a few things that I thought were very interesting, and I wanted to know more about them. And one, you wrote about your affection for mental models. So how do mental models figure in your current work?
That's a great question. The way I think about the world that I live in, especially at work, is that it falls into 4 categories. There's people, process, product, and tech stack. These are the 4 main categories that I think about every time that we're thinking about solving a problem, or we're interacting with a challenge that we have. I think about these 4 aspects, and in most cases, in most organizations that I've worked for, uh, the main area of challenge was in the people and the process section. So the product is doing what we're building it to do. The tech stack is usually something that is static, and we evolve it and we make it better, but it's something that is usually on lower priority. Most of the things that impact us as a company, and I think any company that I work for, is our velocity on how we deliver, and that velocity usually is dependent on the people and the process and how well you do things together as a group, right? Because if you work on your own, then you're dependent just on yourself. But when you work as part of a company, you're dependent on a group of people that in a perfect world would operate efficiently together. And that efficiency, in my mind, falls down to the mental models and the standard operating procedures that accompany us as a company. And if we're aligned on those, then it's much easier for us to operate efficiently and deliver at a higher velocity.
So it's like a shared mental model for collaboration
Correct.
that makes collaboration kind of easier, more fruitful, more efficient, all that kind of stuff. And it seems like a company's values or culture would be part of the mental model, right?
Yeah, they will be embedded. I think the
Yeah.
mental models would be a derivative of those, because at the end of the day, these goals or values that we care about as a company, they help drive the mental models that we want to drive with our employees
Yeah.
and in the process that we have in place.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the concept of mental models is something that existed for hundreds of years. I can give you an example, another provocative example, if you like. The Henlong's razor is an example. It's a
Hmm.
mental model that says don't attribute to malice something that can easily be attributed to stupidity. And it basically
Ah,
says every time you feel like someone is trying to do something to you, it's probably not because they're doing it against you. They probably just don't know, and it's a lack of knowledge. It's not from a place where they're trying to sabotage you. I think if all of us had that mental model embedded in our day to day, then we would feel less. We would focus less on the politics of things, but more on the fact that we assume that everyone is trying to do their best and drive things forward,
right,
and less about what did he say or what did she say and what did you say to me and others.
yeah. Distrust can be a mighty negative force in an organization or in a country, can it? Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Interesting. Hey, let's shift a little bit. I want to talk to you about ZoomInfo. It formed a partnership with Snowflake, I guess, before you came on. Uh, what's the nature of the relationship? What kind of, how is your service integrated into Snowflake's data marketplace?
It's a good question. So our offering in our set of in our portfolio of products that we sell, we have an offering called DaaS. It's data as a service,
Hmm.
and that offering is basically how do we enable our customers to get access to the enormous data set that we have created throughout the years. So our
Yeah.
company graph, our person graph, all these signals that we collect, all that information is great information. We can surface it through our application layer, where basically most of our users interact with it today. 35,000 customers with hundreds of thousands of users that access it on a daily basis. But there's also a way to provide that information in tabular or in a Snowflake data share model that
Yeah.
allows technical and data and analytics teams in these organizations to utilize that data as part of their use cases. So
Yeah.
instead of us solving all of the use cases in by ourselves, the data share model allows us to share our data with other companies that utilize that data in ways that they see fit, combining our data with other data sets, their first party data, and being able to drive insights. So in a similar way of how I use our first party data internally to help the corporate business to drive strategy. Uh, Other companies can use our third party data that we sell
Yeah.
to marry it with the first party data and decide on how we drive insights and analytics forward.
Oh, interesting. So you have applications that you sell to your customers, but you also have data that you sell to them that they can mix and match with other sources and analyze
Correct.
and get insights from. Yeah, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Now, I mean, it's been a couple of years. What kind of interesting, use cases are people putting this data to and putting the part, how are they taking advantage of the partnership?
Yeah. There are many ways, and I think what's great about ZoomInfo as a company and the data that we sell is that the amount of use cases that you can utilize this data for is just infinite.
Hmm.
Uh, I use our data in many cases, from finance of uh, how do we report our earnings to the public, to marketing of how do we target certain personas and companies, to how we sell and how do we decide on what's the propensity of an account to buy a product. um, Even in HR, this data can be used. It's used all across the board for many use cases for many departments. So our product team uses it as well to understand how different personas in our app use our product and try to optimize their journeys. Um, Sales in a similar way of identifying accounts and people who have a higher propensity to buy. Um, Finance to understand how our different customers roll up into the ultimate parents that represent those companies. Um, many use cases that all can be helpful to a business to drive more efficiently.
No, no, that makes a lot of sense. Now, in addition to be a partner of Snowflake, ZoomInfo is also a Snowflake customer. So tell us about how your company is using the data cloud internally.
Yeah, it's Snowflake is a key component of our data platform. So our enterprise data platform, which again is the set of tools that we've built internally to help our employees get answers to questions that they have using the data that is collected all across the board.
Right.
Snowflake is the integral part. We are a warehouse first company, meaning that for all of our corporate objectives and corporate analytics, Snowflake is the first place where things land.
Mhm.
So most of our data analysts, data scientists, uh, product people, marketing managers, finance, every department today utilize Snowflake in one way or another to aggregate data, to combine data, and to derive insights on how to move our business forward from each of those departments.
Yeah, yeah, that makes total
Yeah.
sense. Hey, I want to switch gears again. I'm going to ask you to put on your visionary cap for a minute. Looking out
Yeah.
5 years or more, how do you see data changing business and even society?
It's a That's an interesting question. Um,
Yeah,
well, let's start with
it's a
the
challenging
easy.
question, right?
Yeah, it is. Let's talk about the businesses. I
Okay.
think in the past 10 years, a lot of companies claim to be data driven companies, but in many ways, that's sort of a slogan that you say, so that you put on a deck to impress customers or impress investors. And I think we still have a gap, not we ZoomInfo. I think as companies that arise, they have usually a gap of how data driven they are. It's not a binary thing. It's a spectrum, and on that
Yes.
spectrum, I think we're just scratching the surface. And what I believe that will happen in the 5 years from now is companies from large to smaller companies, they'll start utilizing data on a daily basis to make decisions, and the I think the threshold of crossing the ability to use data will go lower and lower and enable any company to become data driven. And I think things that ZoomInfo does helps that a lot. Things that Snowflake does by decentralizing data access helps a lot. So the more people become data proficient, the more employees of companies become more data
Hmm.
proficient, the easier it is for us all as individuals to make the right decisions based on the data that we see, rather on perceived notions that we have. Um, and that's how it used to work, right? Usually, what would happen is you'd have the hippo. I don't know if you heard that term before, but the highest paying person opinion thrown
Yeah.
in the room, and that's how you would go forward. Today, I think we are lucky enough to be in a world where anyone at the company has access to the data. They can go to look at the data, they can challenge it, and they can help drive it based on those initiatives and not based on the hippo approach.
Yeah. I think that's a great vision. And it seems like as you go along with Copilot, it's going to be more and more user friendly. You'll be able to get more detailed information about the company persona, about the individual customer persona, more refined, more granular. And it seems like that's going to be a great tool. I mean, it seems revolutionary to me, even though we just talked before about how the evolution has been slower maybe than people thought it would be. But I think that's going to be pretty important.
I agree. I agree. I think it'll be a great productivity boost to a lot of businesses and their sales and marketing
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. You know, we typically end the podcast on a lighter and a kind of more personal note. Um, and I know I heard a little bit from you about how you kind of integrate or incorporate some ideas, some really kind of interesting data-based ideas into your personal lifestyle. So, and I hopefully I'm stating that correctly, but straighten me out. Anyway, talk to me about lifespan, health span, and mental span.
Um, yeah, so it's in usual how it works is basically that it's not an idea that I wrote. There's a person named Peter Attia.
Yeah.
He's a has a podcast called The Drive. He talks a lot about lifespan, and lifespan is basically the amount of years that you live. Health span talks about how many of those years are going to be healthy years. So basically, ability to move around and do what you want to do. and then there's a third leg to this is the mental span is from those years that you're alive, you can walk around and take care of yourself. How many of those your your mental headspace is going to be in a good place? And I think
Yeah.
these three areas are things that usually people tackle, but not in a structured way. And I think
Yes.
what people like Peter Attia and Huberman and other and David Sinclair, they touch upon the different areas and help build frameworks that help you on a daily basis incorporate things that will improve each of those areas for you as an individual. So from the health span side, a lot of it goes into the different blood tests that you can do and
Hmm.
how medicine became more available. So for example, top, I don't know if you know, but the 80% of deaths above the age of 50 are contributed mainly to cardiovascular health. That's the main reason.
Right.
The second is basically cancer,
Yeah.
and the third is things like Alzheimer and neurodegenerative diseases. And there's things that you can do on a daily basis, A, from a monitoring perspective to see where you stand, and B, from a preventative perspective of how do you do things on a daily basis to ensure that you're reducing the risk for an event. Because another fun fact, or not so fun, is that the main reason for death above of the age of 50 is cardiovascular events,
Yeah.
and the probability of a person dying from an event the first time they from a first stroke, there's a 50% chance for a person to die on the spot, which is very high compared to any other disease that is on the horizon.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. It's really interesting. You know, I'm forgetting who did this quote, but there's a famous quote: "The unexamined life is not worth living." And it's interesting when you start to think about we now have tools thanks to data, thanks to monitoring, you know, all these advances in science and technology, and that we can really know ourselves and our lives so much better than before. And it's almost like the the unanalyzed life is you know won't be as good as the one where you really understand your health, understand yourself, understand your psyche, understand your mental capabilities and what you can do and when you can do it, and use that information to live kind of a richer and more fulfilling life. And it does get very personal, doesn't it? I mean, it comes down to the personal level.
Yep. No, definitely. I agree 100%. Yep.
Yeah. No, this is cool. You've shared a lot of kind of provocative and interesting ideas today. You know, a lot of very useful stuff, but also some stuff that I think people will take away and say, "Hey, let me think about that a bit." You know, let me ponder on that. So, I mean, when I look back on our conversation, I think it's been great. And the big takeaway, the thing I get most excited about is this idea about the capability of having knowledge at your fingertips, if you will. I mean, but not just shallow knowledge, deep, specific, insightful knowledge when you need it in business. And I think that's as we get more and more of that, we're going to see a transformation of business. And I think you guys are on the cutting edge of that. And I think it's, you know, I applaud what you're doing, and I wish you well with it.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a whole team behind ZoomInfo, a lot of hardworking individuals that are doing amazing things on a daily basis across the board. So yeah, I'm lucky to be part of that group.
No, it sounds like a great job for you, a great spot.